Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So we have this scandal, and we can see how far gone the Trump administration is down a path of no accountability by how they handle this scandal, right? Because someone should be fired, and it should be this guy. Like, this is a thing you have to resign over. It's a major scandal. I don't know how Fox is covering it. I tuned into Fox, and that's part of this because I think Fox is just going to go with Trump and go with this guy's bullshit story, BS story. But let's start here because this is his reaction. Very typical Trumpian reaction.
Deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again.
See, this guy is a messed up guy like Trump. Like you can see, and I showed you this when they were nominating him as press secretary. Every one of these people is very diagnosable. Their narcissism and their psychological issues, which you could say this about everybody, all the people in the Biden administration. But these guys are, more intense, right? The other people are better at hiding their issues, right? And they learn to, be more of I sounding like a normal person, right? But these guys are just full in embracing their psychological dysfunction. And so this guy said that there was a secure line. He ended up being the one who posted these classified war plans. So he's the one who posted it to the group, an unsafe group, on a server that on an app that shouldn't have been used. And he's a Republican. Like it would be way better to be a Democrat and be incompetent in this area. But as a Republican and a supposedly former war guy, right, former military guy, I mean, the military people know how bad this is, right? When this is something that's a military issue of leaking war plans on the internet. Like, you can't do that. It's like almost like a traitorous act, and it's a complete incompetence. And the kind of incompetence that you would, the troops, people who are involved in these, life-threatening, these risky plans, and all of it, like national security stuff, and this is like it's little boy stuff in some ways. It's like like guys having some sort of code words and all, these kind of like some sort of little club you belong into. But to them, it's everything, right? These kind of things, and of course, there's actual lives that were at risk here, which we'll get into in a bit. And so he knows, and they all know this is a big fuck up, like it's a massive fuck up, and there should be some head has to roll, and it really is his, but it's going to look really bad for Trump, and I mean the whole thing's a disaster. And so if there's zero accountability, and Fox News doesn't hold them at all accountable for this, which they should, as being, the channel of the news the news channel of warmongers, right? Then this is like, well, we're gonna, anything that we do, we're just going to say it's fake news, and that's what he's doing here, right? He's saying this is fake news, it didn't happen, and everyone else reporting it like it did happen, like it's factual, right?
Deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, 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 or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, there wasn't texting. This was a part of a group chat. And it either happened or it didn't. And if it did happen, then what you just did is also fireable offense. Like zero accountability. because you just flat out lied about what happened. There's other people involved. Now, if there was a Democratic Senate and there was a Democratic House of Representatives, or one of the two, they would take this, the administration, I mean, it's very close, right? And there will be in 2 years. And they'll take this administration or these people and they would have them testify. And they would see the classified emails or the classified group chat from this reporter. Everyone would be subpoenaed. And it would be out there that this actually happened. It would be something where the Democrats could say, hey, this actually happened. Because we've seen it and we've looked at it. And I don't know how they can do it otherwise. Because this guy can't show classified materials without himself being charged. The reporter couldn't, right? And so, either the guy made up the whole story, which is easy to prove because he either has these materials or he didn't. And if he did, and this guy posted them, which they would be able to track and see, by the screenshots and all this stuff, then, why aren't you arresting him? Because this is like the national security issues. You just can't call the guy fake news. Like the guy's, if he's fraudulently told this story, then you need to do something. This needs to be a crime. You can't undermine the American military and the government by posting some bullshit story, which we know it isn't. And so Pete Hegseth just said, "Oh, this fake news," which is Trump's playbook. And I don't know how there's going to be accountability to prove otherwise. And if Trump comes down on him, which it isn't in Trump's best interest to get the guy to resign, because that looks bad on him. Trump's always talking about how he's got all the best people. So this is a major blunder. Plus, Trump doesn't like to fire people who are loyal to Trump, and this guy licks Trump's feet, or whatever. It could be. And so, I mean, this is like so bad, right? It's going to show you, because this is one of the things that's going to last a little bit because it's so egregious. Like they're covering it, it'll probably last a week. But there's probably going to be no accountability for this. And the big takeaway is America looks incredibly incompetent. And so this isn't just about what happened here, because a couple of days ago, Elon Musk requested to see the war plans against China, which is much more significant. And they almost let him do it. I mean, Trump and this clown almost let him do it. If it wasn't for a New York Times report, they would have let him, and that would have been a major scandal. I mean, they almost like screwed themselves at times by reporting on it when they should have let it happen. So if these two things happen where they let Elon Musk see the war plans and then a week later they leak them to a reporter, it's like Chucklehead Express over there, right? I mean, it's so bad. And all the Trumpers, this is a sign to you that this guy isn't the savior and genius you think he is, because he's just surrounded himself with incompetence, and he's incompetent, and they're running around doing Three Stooges type shit. He's in a Y. Remember, this is a womanizing addict. People who are like that are always screw-ups. He was somebody who was cheating on impregnated a woman who is his now wife. But he was married to another woman. So he was cheating on his first wife with this woman he impregnated, and then he cheated on both of them with a woman who later accused him of sexual assault. Showed up to his Fox News job drunk. He was a substance abuser. And he did all these things so bad that his mom wrote a letter saying, my son's a scumbag. And she wrote to him, "You've got to stop being a scumbag." I mean, it was a bad letter from a mom. And he said he found Jesus at the end of it. And that's what solved his problems, which, like I said yesterday, we all screw up. And, if you're looking to change and be a better person, then, screw-ups are a good thing, or they help you figure out what you have to do, what you have to change, what your weaknesses are, your weakness of character, like how to become a better person. if you're looking to be a better person and do better work, and holding yourself accountable. And I talked a whole bunch about this in my last video. And so, that's why I call these guys pieces of shit, because they make mistakes and they don't do anything to change them. And not for other people, not performative. It should never be performative. It should be something you do inside. Like, everybody's makes mistakes. And this whole thing about other people holding people accountable is because no one really wants to be a better person. People aren't going to, they're not going to figure out the things that their weakness of character and change those things and look for, and have some sort of integrity. And, I'm not like a perfectionist about any of these things. I do it. Like, I work at this stuff, but I'm not like crazy about it. And I know people who are, better at that. And so, like, I would give people a huge pass if they showed any tendency towards self-improvement and self-accountability, like these people never do. And this guy says he found Jesus, which would be great if he found God in some way. And I don't care how it is. Like, I have my system, which I think is the best in terms of connecting to the divinity within you. I'm not, I'm pretty sure there's no system like it, that can compare. But that doesn't mean he has to do my system. People have, the way that you connect to God, the system that you use, or just doing it on your own without any sort of, religion or spiritual system is, that's all good stuff, right? It shows you that it's those kind of people are the people that I want to support in the world, right? And so him saying that he found Jesus would be great if he did, but then he wouldn't be such an asshole now, right? Which he totally is. And, he wouldn't be a part of Trump's bullshit. You can't fight Jesus and then go along with Trump's fake assassination attempt or any of these other things that, these lies. Like, that's not fucking, being a godly man, right? And so there's something wrong with this guy, which we've known. I was surprised he got passed through because he wasn't like, he fought for the National Guard. And then he went on Fox News. So he's really just he's a blogger. He's somebody who knows things about the military. He's into it. And he's got these, whatever it is, tattoos that became an issue. Almost like there's these guys who thought, there's a group of people, and I could look it up, I think it's called The Family or something. And they're like a Christian gang that had pictures of Jesus with like steroided muscles. Like Jesus was like with like a bodybuilder, and Jesus carrying a sword, and Jesus is a warrior. And they were the people that were part of the neocons pushing for all that, America just destroying the Middle East like we did. They were part of the Bush administration, The Family or something like this. And he's like one of those guys. He probably is one of those guys. Jesus as a military frickin' dominator, a pro-war Jesus, right? And so, that's not Jesus. That's that's their own personal Jesus they've made up. He's got a red, white, and blue inside his jacket here. His jacket inside has got a fucking flag.
Your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic. And were those details...
He laughs. Look at him. Like, you fucked up, bro. Massive fuck up. And which a military guy knows. Like, he, aside from the media and all this stuff, like, somebody fucked up and he fucked up. Because he's responsible, because it all comes back to the commander. And, like, he fucking released these plans to this reporter. Like, fucking, how does that even happen, right?
Classified.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's...
This is they did blips before. This is the whole exchange.
...made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of...
Just like he's just desperate. This is a desperate person, right? there's this, he has a desperation, like there's something wrong with him, like he needs to prove himself, some kind of thing, like that's the whole womanizing stuff and whatever it is, right? Like there's just something, he's just not wired right. Fucking, and this is a person that should be bringing sanity to Trump's military ideas, but he's just the opposite. Like this Houthi thing, it sounds like it wasn't something they should have even got involved in, unless Israel had ordered them or whatever it is. Because there was a debate. They were debating on this chat of whether to even do this or not. And Trump wasn't fucking involved. Like J.D. Vance was and these other guys, but Trump wasn't even involved in the debate to do it.
The skill and courage of our troops, I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through.
He meant to say Biden administration. He meant to say he already had another fuck up. So listen, there's another. He's like losing it here. Look at him. Fucking, he's like a Batman villain.
Skill and courage of our troops, I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
Like, Jesus Christ, he's a fucking nervous motherfucker, right? He's restless and, ADHD or whatever it is, right? Just.
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So he's admitted it. Like he would have said there was no journalists involved in the Signal. We didn't use Signal, and that's all hoax. He called the guy fraudulent and a hoax, and he questioned the guy's credibility. But then he just admitted to it at the end. Because he didn't say it didn't happen. So he just admitted it happened. He's blaming the journalists. Like, what should a journalist do? A liberal journalist is going to cover up for you? Like, fucking, you guys have gone after all of them. And, they hate you. So, like, fucking, they want this thing. So how he got involved in the group chat is crazy. The fact that you were using Signal was fucking a blunder. And that you put out these plans and he was given access to them is all where you have to resign. You have to quit. And you don't say, all I have to say about that is, no, all this, so, he would have said, that didn't happen. This is a complete made up story. Like you said in the beginning, it's all a hoax and these things and Russia, and this guy was a part of that. And he was he's a deceitful person. Okay, sure, maybe he is that. Like, these guys are all shitty journalists and they all put out fake news, just like you do. But was he a part of the chat or not? You didn't deny that. And so you're fucked, but he's not fucked. Like, he should resign. Like, and all the Trumpers should be like, yeah, this guy's got to resign. This has to happen. And so I want to see how they're covering this on Fox News. I got some other stuff to get to first. But this guy is fucked, right? He should be fucked, but I don't think he is. I think they just move on, like this never happened. That's the Trump way. Pretend it didn't happen and call fake news. So in my recent covering of this, I don't want to call it reporting, we have Trump saying that Canada screwed America over and is screwing America over with 200% dairy, I can't even remember the word. Tariffs, right? Dairy tariffs. And it turned out that the deal that he was referring to was a deal he made that he said was the greatest deal ever. The greatest, the greatest economic deal between Mexico and Canada, which also makes his tariffs on them complete bullshit because he has a deal that's still in place. Like he negotiated the best trade deal he's the guy who negotiated this trade deal. And that the Biden administration kept it in place. So it's it's still those things that he negotiated are still there, and part of it was the dairy thing that so this is the reason Trump was saying he's being so hard on Canada and how bad they're screwing us over, and it was a deal that they negotiated with him, which he said was a great deal, and they never meet those tariffs because they never import enough milk from the U.S. to meet the tariffs, so it's far under that, and so it's not even they're not screwing America over at all. So Trump just lied about tariffs, and that's all he has. He doesn't have real shit. And so that's, should be a scandal. And then this thing breaks like that day. Right? This is another thing. We just had the Elon Musk thing that happened. But they're going to share classified information with Elon Musk. Like it's one screw up after another. Like they don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? And there's going to be no accountability because they don't hold they don't hold themselves accountable. And there's no real media accountability because they just say it's fake news, and that's on the media. This is as much as a media issue as anything else. In the Democratic Party that allowed a senile guy with dementia with a Parkinson's to be president and elect him when he had these things. They knew he had it before he got elected. And he was run like as a puppet, with the auto pen and things where he didn't even know what he was signing. And so this is, a complete breakdown of our overall government and our media and all the agencies that are supposed to hold people accountable. And so there's going to be no accountability, but there's, going to be accountability. Like it'll be, America tanks, like America is falling apart, right? This is idiocracy shit.
That's it. The NSC said it was authentic. Mr. Secretary?
Yeah, it's authentic. Like he's, he seemed very nervous, like he had just been caught doing something and he came out aggressive, fake news. They're always going to use this fake news thing. And they can use it because there was fake news. But this is not fake news. This is you fucking up, right? And you not being accountable. And so this is where we are as a country. This is idiocracy. This is this is how idiocracy unfolds. So I saw Erin Burnett talking about, she had some military. It was kind of a good thing. I didn't record it. And I hopefully can find that, but I don't even know if I do. I need to. She had this guy on Maybe. This is the report. I think this is a reporter here.
Secretary Hegseth there saying that nobody was texting war plans. Given you were privy to this group chat, is that how you saw it?
No, that's a lie. He was texting war plans. He was texting attack plans. When...
All right, this guy's fucked up too, right? This is the guy who was involved because look at him. Look at this ghoulish motherfucker. Like just the whole thing. This is idiocracy. This is you just like there's no heroes here. There's people who can catch each other for screwing up. We can catch them having Joe Biden being senile and pushing him forward. They can catch Trump's guys being idiots. Like it's just going back and forth, right? There's no, good journalists, good people, people with integrity, people with honor, people with, a connection to divinity, people with a purpose. They're just all, they're all slime. This is where everything turns into slime and incompetence and boobery and all this shit.
Targets were going to be targeted, how they were going to be targeted, who was at the targets, when the next sequence of attacks were happening. I didn't publish this, and I continue not to publish it because it felt like it was too confidential, too technical, and I worry, honestly, that sharing that kind of information in public could endanger American military personnel. But
and you're worried that you would be held accountable for this because you would have been leaking classified documents, and I whatever it is, it's bad. But if he has them, he has them. Like he has these things, and if he has them, this is a fireable offense. Hegseth should be resigning like today. They should do the assessment and they should say, you guys got to resign. He's got to fucking resign. Like the guy shouldn't be in there in the first place. But it's going to make Trump look really bad. Trump's already, Trump has the tariffs, right? The tariffs, like we have the thing I covered with Trump's tariffs, which are a disaster. He was put in this job to reduce the cost of living and the inflation and prices. And he put in tariffs that increase prices. And he's starting a war with Canada, and his only justification was that he got screwed over in a deal that he said was the best deal ever. And it wasn't even being screwed over because there were tariffs that don't even exist. He's talking about China Canada as being some great negotiators. And so he doesn't care about the fentanyl thing. And he just did this to bully people and renegotiate, which he does in his private business, where he would bully these people that, didn't have he's trying to bully other countries. And they're like, all right, we'll just outlast you here because you're going to fall apart because half the country already hates you. And the other half is going to start hating you when, all these prices come up. So they're getting rid of Trump. These countries are standing up to him, Canada and the rest of them. And so, it's a disaster for him. And he can't reverse himself and say, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And then say, hey, I got to fire this guy because he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Because now this idea that he's playing 3D chess or 4D chess, 5D chess, my wife said that she saw some Republican people said, if he did leak it to this guy, he did it on purpose. That's how Trumpers are characterizing this. This is how fucked up they are, how cultish they are, that they're saying this was planned. And that guy, Pete Hegseth, that nervous frickin', agitated, restless motherfucker you just saw, this desperate person. These people are desperate. They have this desperation inside of them, right? You can see these people who are desperate, like there's something missing inside of them. There's something that's just, and it's a lot of these people, but you can see him displaying it right there when he was talking. There's a desperation inside of him, beyond what's happened here. This is this is why he's trying to fill that void, the darkness inside of him with, women and alcohol and these people with addictive personalities because they don't want to face who they are. There's something like they're not okay with who they are, right? Whatever's happened in their life, whatever PTSD has, he can't reconcile what's inside of him. And then he says he found Jesus as a way to, to get all the people on his side. Like, oh yeah, I had these problems, but I found Jesus. But he didn't find Jesus because he's a lying piece of shit, right? Jesus wouldn't, he couldn't be somebody who's connected to Jesus or anybody, his, soul, and do the kind of shit and be a part of the kind of shit that Trump's pushing out there. And so this is America falling apart, right? This is the kind of shit that happens when the ship be sinking, right?
No, they were plans for the attack. And they were texted before the attack.
And there were things texted that you viewed as so sensitive, you did not even publish them in your report today.
I made the decision that the technical aspects of this, including what kinds of weapons packages, the attack sequencing, and so on, that's not necessarily in the public interest. What's in the public interest is that they were running a war plan on a messaging app and didn't even know who was invited into the conversation. I mean, it's an obvious, ridiculous security breach. And, he if you notice, he didn't actually answer the question.
But his attempt at a denial also stood out to me because no one that I talked to at the White House today argued this or tried to say these were, misconstrued or altered or this is not real. I mean, the National Security Council confirmed the veracity of it.
The National Security Council, I asked various officials, including Pete Hegseth this morning, for comment. And the first question I had for everyone is this real? I wanted to make sure, obviously, before we go public, and say, are you sure that this is not a disinformation campaign run by a foreign state, a non-state actor of some sort, trying to target a journalist for reasons I couldn't explain? And they're like, no, this is apparently a real channel, and I appreciate them telling the truth about that, and we published.
Did they seem alarmed when you reached out for comment?
Probably is not the happiest day that they experienced in the White House. So
Jesus Christ. It'd been great if he started asking questions in the chat, right? It'd be great if he invited other people. Or if he had the power to do that. I don't know. He probably didn't have administrative power. But, it's complete idiocracy in so many different ways. And, there are a couple other pieces of this. So when they showed some of the chat and some of his reporting, there was a debate between J.D. Vance and some of these other people about whether they should even do this strike. So they weren't even sure they should do it up to the last minute. J.D. Vance was saying only 4% of the traffic of the goods and services go through this port, go through this, this ocean that the Houthis are bombing these ships and doing shit, right? And so there was an element like it really isn't going to make a difference and it isn't a big deal and whatever. And Trump wasn't involved in this chat. Like, he's not talking. Like, J.D. Vance is, supposedly ex-military, these people. And they're all, they all have this, whatever their credentials are. And then the emojis and shit that happened afterward make them look like chuckleheads, which I covered yesterday. But like this whole thing is a fucking mess, right? The terrorist thing, the stuff with Elon Musk getting classified information for China where he's compromised. And, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? And, the whole idea, like I said, I said this like 3 weeks ago or whatever, 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's not that long ago because he hasn't been president that long. That any thought that Trump was a 5D chess player and that he was some brilliant businessman and that he knew what the American people needed and what the America needed, and these tariffs would actually work, and these other things he was doing would actually work, is out the window. Like he's just throwing shit up on the wall. He's totally incompetent, and he is that guy who went bankrupt 6 times and ran his businesses into the ground, right?
Far, but they were professional about it.
I thought that as you were kind of walking through when this began, you weren't even sure if it was real yourself. You thought maybe I'm being spun or conned or something's happening here.
Until the day that I received the attack plan from Pete Hegseth at 11:44 a.m. that Saturday, March 15th, and then saw the attack plan said that 13:45, 1:45.
The big question here is how did he get involved in the chat? Like how was he included? Like how did that even happen? Right?
5 p.m. Eastern time that the first bombs would be dropping in Yemen. Until that moment, until that period elapsed, the 2-hour period between that text and the first bombs being dropped, I thought it was a hoax. I thought somebody was trying to entrap me. Again, could it have been a foreign intelligence service? Could it have been a gadfly organization that tries to entrap journalists, which we know happens? I didn't know what it was or who it was, but what I did know was that the obvious answer was that this is a real conversation of the national security leadership of the United States. Seemed improbable to me because why would they do it on Signal? Why would they do this on a...
Jesus Christ. This guy's fucking... I mean, it was so bad and so stupid, he didn't even know, he didn't think it was real. Like, this is when they started reporting about the Luka Doncic trade that was so ridiculous and so stupid by the Dallas Mavericks that they couldn't believe it was real. Like, the reporter who was reporting on it couldn't believe it was real. They couldn't believe it was real because it was so stupid, right? But this has national security implications. And so... again, like this is all the show, but like in the show, if this was a movie, what Pete Hegseth did was another level of incompetence because they've already confirmed this is real to this guy, and everybody's talking to know this is real, that this guy was included in a chat that he shouldn't have been. I mean, even if they didn't release war plans, which he either has them that he doesn't, and I'm sure he does. Because, they didn't know, and so they shouldn't have done this on Signal. I mean, it's just silly. Like, that's like not understanding. I mean, you could set up your own server, your own private, these are the things that they were supposed to be doing, right? Your own private channels. But doing it on something where, and inviting somebody, how did they not know they'd invited this guy? Like, this guy's a liberal reporter. It's not even some Fox News guy. Like, he's a liberal reporter. And so how he's even in the chat is a whole thing. Like, that's a whole thing. And Pete Hegseth would have to come out and say, we screwed up. Somebody screwed up, and, because he said this is secure. So he screwed up because he didn't know. He said this is secure, and let's go and do it. And, And, I mean, this was a major fuck-up. Like, just, in terms of, not for me, I don't give a shit. This doesn't bother me at all. Like, I don't, all this stuff. Like, I think these guys are incompetent boobs, and I expect nothing from them. They are not the cream of the crop. I don't expect them to be better than me. I'm not meticulous, right? I'm sloppy in my life, and I expect these guys to be worse. They're dumb. They're disconnected. They're unnatural. They're fucking weird. They make their screw-ups, and they're self-sabotaging losers, right? I mean, this is Trump. Like, Trump is a guy who just ran one company into the ground after another. He's a grifter. Fucking grifters can't do real work. The whole idea behind being a grifter is you don't really want to do real work. You want to con people. You don't want to make something. You don't want to do something great. You want to con people, right? You want to make money for free without doing anything, without doing a good hard day's work. You want to just the grifting itself is hard enough for you, right? It's just you're scamming people out of their money. You're running a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme. That's what Trump is. He's somebody who he does actually produce things, but they're not real. They're money laundering schemes or ways to defraud people out of their money, investors. And so, this is, it's a huge fuck up that isn't going to be held accountable because their standards have been lowered so much, right? And the people and the Trump supporters, they're so desperate. I mean, there's a lot of desperation here in America, and the desperate people looking for somebody to tell them what they know is going to happen isn't going to happen. And that's what I say. It is going to happen. It's happening right now. Like even in the truth community, people are so desperate they didn't want to call bullshit on Trump and his totally fake WWE assassination attempt. It was clearly fake. They didn't even want to pretend it could be fake. They just, no, not Trump. And even though Trump had fucked them over with Operation Warp Speed and all the other bullshit he had pulled his first term, and he showed nothing in terms of being a great president, only that he wasn't going to do these other wars, which he's now involved in, because he's totally involved in the Israel thing, and then which is he's on the wrong side of that, and that's the worst one in terms of who Israel is, right?
Messaging app, and why would they invite the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic to watch?
And how many people were on
Yeah, so that's the big question. Like, how did his name even be put in there?
this chat?
18.
And did any of them at any point when you were included in here ever raise that question? Why are we talking about this over Signal?
No, nobody raised the question, why are we talking about this over Signal? And nobody said, hey, who is JG? Because you show up in a little bubble as your initials. And no one at any point said, who's JG? And when I withdrew from the group, you formally remove yourself. You hit a button. It says JG has removed himself from the group. I assumed that somebody would say, hey, who just removed himself from the group? Nothing.
You didn't hear from Mike Waltz or anyone else after that?
No, nothing at all. I mean, it's a level of incuriosity. I guess that's the polite way of saying it. It's a level of recklessness.
Yeah, that's why I've talked about Trump. He's not a curious person. They don't have those kind of minds. People who are competent people would be like looking at all these people and saying, we're leaking classified information. Do we know all these people? And it's only 18 people. And this was, the level of the group was supposed to be, I have that, I think, somewhere else, unless he talked about it. This was administrative position level people, like the guy in charge of the CIA, the vice president of the United States, the defense secretary. Like, these were people on high levels. They weren't these, this was a exclusive Trump administration group. And there's a guy there, JG, and they don't even know who it is, right? Like, fucking, they're oblivious to it. And they're doing it on an app that could be compromised. So, like, they just are, like, fuck-ups. I mean, they're fuck-ups because the guy who's running this thing is a grifter. Nothing's real here, right? It's all performative.
Recklessness that I have not seen in many years of reporting on national security issues.
And so you eventually remove yourself from the chat.
Right. Once I was sure that it was real.
But after you've seen everything, I mean, you published these messages.
Well, I don't know what I haven't seen since then. But yes, I removed myself and I started writing the story.
That's
in
fair.
order to expose the security breach.
And some White House reporters today were saying, maybe I would have never removed myself from that.
These are tough questions. But I can't go into it, all the decision making involved in this. But I found out what I needed to find out. A, that it was real, and B, that it did represent the kind of gap, the Mack truck-sized gap in their security that I could never have imagined a White House experiencing.
I mean, because you're a reporter, and probably a worse nightmare to have.
What we're now looking at, what's important about this, how long before we stop talking about this? How long before they stop talking about this, right? Like, how long before the next fuck up or how long before the next bombshell story? I'm giving it a week. Like, it's going to fade and what's the outcome? Is anybody going to resign? Is there going to be any kind of accountability? I say no. That they'll just let it, this is what Bill Clinton did with the Monica Lewinsky scandal. That was a much bigger scandal that lasted over a longer period of time. Not as bad as this in many ways. Like national security wasn't at risk. He was just cheating on his wife in the Oval Office with an intern. And they lied about it. And he just pretended like he knew what he was supposed to do, which was resign, and he refused to do it. And when he did that, he broke all these, hidden rules about decorum and protocol and, appearance and things and integrity. And then other presidents, and Trump particularly, have done the same thing. I'm just not going to do it, right? It's that, in the Matrix movie, when the Smith program character, he's a program, refuses to die even though he was killed in the Matrix. He goes, I knew I was supposed to do it, I just didn't do it. I refused to die. And so that's what's happening here. Like Pete Hegseth should be dead. Like political career should be over. He should resign when disgraced and go back to binge drinking and, all the things he was doing before he found Jesus, because he's a fucked up person. He's got a lot of issues. But I don't think that's going to happen. And if it does, it's going to embarrass Trump. Like I think Trump's caught between the embarrassment he feels and then the admission that he appointed somebody who didn't know what the fuck he's doing because they're not even 2 months into his administration. He's already had the major fuck-ups with the tariffs. And then once he blinks and says, yeah, one of my guys screwed up, we don't know what we're doing. Trump, again, not involved in the chat, which is kind of a big deal, too. The vice president is, but Trump isn't. Because Trump doesn't give a shit about these things. He just says, he hands it over to some person that he thinks is competent. And I don't think he's appointed very many competent people. And then, all the things that go with it. And so, he's on borrowed time until they start holding him accountable, which, maybe the Republicans, some of them start, realizing that he's going to run this country into the ground quicker than expected. But again, maybe they've all been told to stand down. Who knows? But they're also part of this is making America look bad. Like this is part of their deal. This stuff that's happening. The people who control the system want America to, show it's like we're just done. And, this is a reason why we're going to end America's reign of terror. And, it's no longer going to be the number one military, the number one economy, right? This is, all these things are part of that, right? On a global, a global stage.
Have someone included on a chat, but a foreign adversary or someone who wanted to do real harm to the United States. I think that's the concern that is so obvious.
Look,
here.
I say this only half jokingly. I mean, I'm sitting in a Safeway parking lot watching my phone and realizing, oh my God, this might be real. I think Pete Hegseth just sent this group actual targeting information, actual sequencing of an attack. And I'm holding on to the phone. I don't want anybody to... And then I thought to myself, well, I mean, I guess they're lucky they didn't send this to a Houthi by mistake or to a foreign diplomat or to somebody who would plausibly be in one of their phones. I guess that counts as a kind of luck. That's why they're not supposed to use open source, privately owned messaging services. They're supposed to keep all those conversations on what they call the high side. That's the classified side, where only government officials...
Okay, so, today's Tuesday, 25th of March. And this video won't be up till, I think, Thursday. Or maybe it'll be, the video that I first started doing this will be up tomorrow. I haven't even published that yet. So that'll be up tomorrow. And, by Thursday, we'll see where this is. Like, you'll know if you're following the news. I'll certainly, be aware of it. And so what will I be talking about in 2 days, right? When this video that I'm putting up here, like this is how bad the Trump administration is, that this could already be old news because some other fuck up has happened, right? Okay, so let's move on to this. So this is CNN's right-wing guy, Scott Jennings. The title of this video, I have not seen it yet, is Scott Jennings calls for an investigation of Trump team's Yemen leak. And I don't know how he says it, because I haven't watched this yet. This woman also, she's Lee Wright Riggerer, author of The Loneliness of the Black Republican. So I don't know if she's a Republican. I probably think she's Republican based on the title of that book. But Scott Jennings, I've never seen him say anything bad about Trump. He often praises Trump, and he's the Republican cover. He's in there to mix things up and cause issues. I saw him during election night. I don't watch these shows. Occasionally, I see these clips, and he's again very pro-Trump. And so if he's calling bullshit on Trump, then that's a problem. Not as much as Fox people, but like they had people on there, ex-military people, saying that these guys have to resign. That anybody who, if you were a soldier, you'd be court-martialed for this stuff. Like if you were, you create some chat group on Signal as a soldier, and some civilians were involved, and you leaked classified information, you'd be fucked, right? You'd be going to jail. So this is, you'd be court-martialed. So, this is outrage is prevalent. And the other issue here is, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, and all these major news networks really suck, which we all know. And they are legitimately called fake news. Like they tried to call us fake news, which, a lot of the stuff on the internet is fake news because it's people who don't have critical thinking skills, don't have the ability to be reporters. It's just a bunch of people who report rumors and ideas and conspiracies and whatever without, vetting them or, this kind of thing. There's no editors. Like they don't, I talked about this in my last video about having personal integrity and, code, some sort of code and these things to, the way that you present information. You're limited because you're just doing it based on the knowledge you have that you see on the internet. Like most of the things that I cover here are just what's available on the internet. I'm covering the internet's coverage of these things, right? I'm not, part of any of these groups of people, I'm not interacting with these people. These people could just all be, AI bots, right? They could be deep fake people. They're not even real people, like as far as I know, right? I don't interact with any of these things. I just make a comment on the show that I turn on my computer, and I have access to what I call the show, a window into the show, this mainstream, bullshit of sports and celebrities and politics and all this other stuff. It's meaningless to me because, I know it's going to happen. Like I know what the ending's going to be. And it's going to be America is not like it is now, right? I mean, I can't describe it exactly, but I know kind of what's going to happen. I'm 100% sure about it. Like it's just, the reason why this is called Pockets of the Future. It's the end of this world that we now know. It's our reality. And, that's happening right before our eyes. But in terms of the, CNN and MSNBC, they've been discredited. All these major news, the things that Trump calls fake news have been discredited. And they're tanking because young people don't want to get their information from that format, and they suck. They have sucky people. It's not entertaining other than when you want to mock it, and it's a joke, right? In all that, Trump has made them relevant because Trump could have done the best job he could have done. He could have been, of course, Trump could never do a good job, but he could have hired competent people and not do bullshit things like tariffs. But, Trump at the end of the day is a fucking grifter. And so when CNN and MSNBC cover him as a grifter, that's not fake news because he is a grifter. Like he isn't somebody who's competent and he isn't this guy that he's sold, he's not going to be the guy his supporters think he is. And so he's going to do grifting shit, and grifters make mistakes, and, their grift falls apart. It's an illusion. They can only, they get you to buy into the illusion, and then at some point you realize you're being grifted. But his people are so dumb and so desperate, and so, the desperation more than dumb, that they just won't see it because they know if he's a grifter, then we're fucked, right? That's what I said about all these people in the truth community who refused to cover Trump as a grifter and refused to cover Trump as this stuff that he did with the WWE style fucking assassination attempt. And so now he's made CNN relevant because CNN can cover him and MSNBC as a grifter, which he is now being exposed as a grifter. And so now they're no longer fake news because you go to them and they don't have to make shit up or exaggerate things. They just have to report on what Trump is doing, which is running the country into the ground. Like, that's how bad Trump is and how bad things are, right? That CNN and MSNBC are now able to be real news again, right? Which is completely fucked.
Something much larger, something much more systematic, right? So when you have people, I think, that are not qualified to be in roles and taking on these things, but also kind of not qualified in terms of competence and knowing how things work, knowing how should we be using, what kinds of systems should we be using, what are the protocols? There are all kinds of questions that those arise. There is a larger issue, too, of accountability. How are we going to deal with this? It's not something that should just go away in the news cycle tomorrow. It is something that should be investigated. It should be investigated with oversight. And I have the real question I think we should be thinking about is who is doing the investigating of the investigators? Right? So the Trump White House says, well,
all valid points, right? Now, I don't know what she is in terms of her political beliefs. I've never seen her before. The loneliness of the black Republican could be, she could be right from a Democratic perspective or a Republican perspective or independent, who knows, right? But again, it becomes like this guy's a complete hack and sucks, and they talk bullshit about everything else. But now they can say with certainty that Trump is a grifter, and any of that coverage from that perspective is correct. Because we now know Trump is a complete grifter. Like, we knew it before, but now it's been confirmed. Like, you could say, all right, maybe he would be a grifter that ended up being brilliant and ended up being a great president, right? Like, no one really thought that is using critical thinking skills, but it was a possibility that Trump was going to come in and do some shit that was going to work. And he did some good things. He got rid of the gender stuff that was all bad, right? Like, he got rid of some things that needed to get rid of, like some of the Biden stuff and some of the liberal stuff. He got rid of some of the censorship, the things that he did that were positive, which I will always acknowledge, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But at the end of the day, he's a fake. He's a fraud. And so, the shit he's doing is what frauds do. And he doesn't, he's not thoughtful or curious or good or efficient or insightful. He's not a wonderkin. He's not some brilliant guy. He's just, a grifter who really good at convincing people that he's something that he isn't.
We'll take care of it. But the problem is, in lots and lots of these cases, there have been independent investigations. There have been congressional investigations, including on both sides of the aisle. But there have also been inspectors general's investigations, right? This is how you pinpoint the problem. What do you do when those options are gone? When the Trump administration has removed them, you can't continue to say, well, this is just carelessness, this is just an accident. Because one time maybe is an accident, but we're also talking about people that should know better and should do better, particularly when it comes to issues of national security.
To the point of this being systemic, if you notice, the group name was Houthis PC Group. PC, people who don't know, stands for Principals Committee. In the White House, you have staff level meetings, you have deputy level meetings, and then you have Principals Committee meetings. In order to be eligible to be in a Principals Committee meeting, you have to be secretary level or above. So
yeah, this is the guy, I actually heard this, so it must have been played in the background. But, all right, so, that's bad, because the guy who's a reporter for a liberal magazine isn't a secretary in the Trump administration. He's the secretary of fuck you, Trump, right? And so, they handed a liberal reporter, not a reporter, like the guy who's in charge of, much of the magazine or the online, whatever it is, the Atlantic. They handed him this thing. How fucked is that, right?
So, as mentioned, this is a systemic thing where this is the most senior people in our administration who are being careless with information and classified data. And surely it's not the first time that they have done this. And I think the most important thing about this particular case that people should understand is that this was not just a drone strike, although that would be very, very concerning regardless of that. But this was a manned mission. There were human lives on the line for this.
This is a piece of shit former White House Deputy Cabinet Secretary under President Biden. He's become relevant now because Trump's fuck up, right? When you deal with a fuck up, when something happens, if you're legitimate and you want to be seen as legitimate, much of this thing is, well, how can we get away with this? Or how can we, it's low-level behavior. It's fucking scumbaggery, right? How can we, avoid embarrassment? Or how can we, what's the do a damage assessment risk and, what's our easy out? Like, who can we have somebody fall on their sword, right? Have Hegseth fall on their sword, or, what's the best course of action? But, there's a way that you would do it where you have morals and integrity, and you're like, what's the right thing to do, right? I'm laughing because that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the media. It doesn't exist in the White House. This is a guy who was served for a guy who had dementia, who was gone mentally, and they all had to know it on some level. And, Biden did some bullshit things, and their obsession with Trump and all these things that, all of it. So this guy isn't some great guy, but he's able to talk truth now because Trump sucks so fucking bad that Trump's a grifter, being exposed as a grifter.
This mission. So the fact that this could have fallen into wrong hands because of this carelessness would have potentially impacted the lives of American soldiers.
Did I see you nodding yes when I think it was the professor saying there should be an investigation into this?
Yeah, I do think there should be, and I think they're already doing it at the White House. But I totally agree with you because they're not quite sure how he wound up on the thing, and we need to find that out.
How fucked is that? They don't even know how he got on there, right? But again, we're talking about how COVID is. We don't know what COVID is. Like at least they say they don't know how COVID was leaked. They didn't say they don't know where it came from. They're not even 100% saying it's a lab leak from Wuhan. They're not blaming China. Like, how can we stop this again? Like I said, after COVID, if the right thing, if you are taking feedback as a person, right? Like if you had that level of fuck up, like when I have a screw up where I almost got hurt, some guy did something that I'm like, oh, that was reckless. Then I develop a system and a protocol in my life where I don't allow that thing to happen again. Like it just, it's a warning sign, right? My brother said to me, I was doing a landscaping business. My brother had done a landscaping business. And I bought this big ass lock mower, which is like one of those old fashioned, it was a gas mower, but it was like those ones you see with those real mowers that you push. They have these circular blades and you push it. And it was the guy used it on a golf course because of the way it cut grass, right? And my brother had used one of these before, but it was god awful heavy. And I went to one of my buddies who was a builder, and he had all these tools and things, and he bent some steel so that I could put it on some 2x6s, like these, a half-inch steel. Like I didn't have the capabilities of bending it, and he drilled some holes in it so I could screw it to the board. As my brother had this before, so I could, I had this old pickup truck, and I could, run the mower up these boards and onto the pickup truck. And my brother stopped me and said, look, I almost didn't tell you this, but, I didn't want you to get hurt or whatever. And you had gapped the board, right? Like I didn't push it flush against the truck. And he said, if you had, it could have wrecked the mower and I could have got hurt, but I never would have done it again, right? I would have always checked it. And that was enough. Him telling me was something where I always double check that because I'm not a detail person. And so like I have to, compensate for that. I have dyslexia, I have these things, I'm also often in a rush. Certain times I get sped up or whatever. But I've learned to slow down and make better choices. And so that's what you have to learn in life. Like you make a mistake, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again, right? That's like, how you do these things. Or something like this. You're supposed to learn from these things. In the Whispers of the Brighter World message, these channel message that I've read some of them here and certainly a lot in the Journey series, it says over and over again, we've warned these people, the people in leadership positions. They've been warned over and over again, in various ways. And this should be a warning sign to the American people and the Trump supporters and everybody that Trump is fucking a disaster. And certainly leaders outside of the country. I mean, what he's doing with, Trump besmearing Canada's name, right? Besmirching Canada's name, and and making up lies that the Canadian people know that they didn't that the tariff isn't a fuck you to America, that Trump negotiated that tariff, and it's not being utilized, the dairy tariff. Like Canada knows, Like Canada knows this isn't true. And they're like, well, this guy's a piece of shit. Like he's lying about us and making us sound worse to his people. And his supporters who support this piece of shit are also accountable. And so Canada knows Trump's a piece of shit. Like they have their own piece of shit or they did. I don't know. They got a new prime minister there. They all have, everyone has their things. But, Trump is lying about Canada, who's one of our best allies and, business partners. And he's doing it in a way that's totally fucking wrong, right? And, even this guy's calling him out, right? So, like, this is how bad he is. And this should be a warning to everybody that this guy is a complete fucking bonehead and is going to be like this all for his next 4 years. And, and what accountability, what is he going to do to rectify the situation? Like, is they going to put competent people in? Maybe they won't do this specific thing again, but they're going to do shit like this because that's what they've done all along. They're not, they're careless. Because, again, when you're running a grift, you don't have to care about the fake product you're selling to people, right?
There's something wrong with this system, which, by the way, I should just add again, they say already existed, was preloaded on computers and devices when they got there and was in use upon their arrival. So maybe we need an investigation of when Signal started being used and by who.
He's trying to blame Biden.
And why people thought it was a good system to use. But of course, when you make a mistake, you own up to it, you investigate the cause of it.
Did Pete Hegseth just own up to it, admit to it?
Well, look, I don't think there's, the White House has admitted.
I think the answer there is no, though, right?
The head of the National Security Council and his spokesman have said these appear to be authentic messages, so they have absolutely validated that it occurred. So you own up to it, you figure out what happened, and you use it as a teachable moment, which is don't make these kinds of mistakes again, and you learn from it, and I agree, you do try to move forward. But I agree with you. You have to look into these things. You can't slough it off. It's an important deal. And I'm sure there's more details about it that we don't know yet, but that's what an investigation.
Hillary Clinton on leak, you have to be kidding me. Hillary fucking Clinton gets to say that shit, right? After all her mishandling of the fucking, this is how bad it is. Like, you're handing them the moral high ground. You're handing Hillary Clinton and the Democrats the moral high ground. Like, this guy's having to backpedal. He usually is arguing with these people. And he dropped that bullshit about it being started under Biden. So their whole thing is that Biden sucks. What this piece of shit just said was that they were using Signal under Biden. But if everything that Biden did was wrong, and he was the worst president in history, and he had the worst people, and he ran this country into the ground, which is Trump's whole, everything that he says is that, then why would you continue on what Biden did? If Biden wrecked the military, like Pete Hegseth said, then why would you be doing what he did? Like, why would you be doing what Biden people did? Like, that's not a fucking excuse. That makes it even worse. Because you said Biden's full of shit and you have to fix everything Biden did, and then you're using Signal to do this stuff, and you're like, well, the Biden people did it, so it's okay. Well, you guys don't trust the Biden people. You say they suck, right? Like, this is just, it's a fucking disaster.
Investigation would uncover.
But what does it say that our Secretary of Defense, who leads the largest employer in the entire world, 2.9 million people, and who oversees the best fighting force in the world, was willing to share war plans on a text message app?
Well, there is a dispute about the nature of war plans between Hegseth and Goldberg, and I haven't seen what the texts look like, and neither.
Okay, but you got to believe Goldberg because Hegseth has already fucking, he tried to do the fake news bullshit, which, that shows a lack of accountability. He tried to blame the guy that got accidentally, like the guy didn't ask to be a part of the group. He didn't deceive them. He's saying the guy's deceptive and he's a, fake news guy. But you put him in that position. If he's lying about this shit, you put him in the position by including him in a group he didn't belong in. So you got to say, yeah, we fucked up. Like, the first thing you do is like, it was a major fuck up. We screwed up. We got to fix it. But his first thing was say, oh, it's fake news. And, that drunk fuck, that drunk womanizing fuck, right? Immoral fuck, who's obviously got issues. And now he's done something fucking horrible, for his job.
Or have you? And so we'll let them fight that out.
It's just stop fucking covering for Trump. Like, you're in a shitty position. You're on CNN, and CNN has the moral high ground, and you're there fucking, you're backpedal, you're doing a backstroke in Trump's fucking diarrhea, right? Like this is a fucking, just admit like this is horrible. And Pete Hegseth has to fucking resign. That's what everyone should be saying. So let me check out I got a whole bunch of more things to watch. I haven't seen most of these things. But, like this is, again, what are we going to be talking about on Thursday? What am I going to be talking about in 2 days from now? When I'm making a video. What's going to be important to the American people? Because, they're not going to let this thing die, the media, but it will die. Because, nothing means anything anymore. There's no accountability. Because it's idiocracy. So the first thing that came up when I searched for Fox News Pete Hegseth Yemen leak was this.
Indo-Pacific, shifting priorities to make sure we're deterring threats to the future. President Trump's been focused on that. Reestablishing the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and ultimately reestablishing deterrence is critically important.
So that's what they're pushing. They're being a platform for Pete Hegseth's bullshit. The guy who used to work for them used to show up for work drunk. So that's their first thing. That's the first thing that came up, the top search for Fox News, right? The rest of the stuff is live now from Fox, which I don't know what that is. I don't think that's their TV channel. I don't think this stuff makes it onto their TV because I've never seen this guy before. So I don't know how they're dealing with it. But this is...
And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's dive into really the biggest story of the day. Remember this major story in the Atlantic magazine, the material...
This isn't like Fox and Friends in the morning or any of those shows. This is a 5, these Fox shows, these bullshit Fox shows, any of these commentary shows. This is, I think, just an internet thing.
Remember in this text chain on the Signal messaging app that the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic was invited into inadvertently, his name, Jeffrey Goldberg. Well, it, quote, contained operational...
Okay, so we know the story, right? They're covering the story. And this guy they're bringing in this expert.
On a Monday, nonetheless, but here we are. And I have to ask Hal...
Come on, Hal.
Because this is not a leak in the...
Hal Kempfer, national security analyst.
...traditional sense. And that's why I feel weird calling it a leak. But what did you make of...
He doesn't even want to call it a leak.
Hegseth's comments there responding to this story? Did he do any good effort to allay or alleviate concerns about what...
Here they show Hegseth, right? So this guy's going to tell you it isn't as bad as you think it is.
...transpired on that Signal group chat?
Simply on what I heard him say, I didn't hear denial. He attacked Jeffrey Goldberg, kind of attacked the Atlantic. He talked about Russia, other things in the past, which I'm not sure some of those things were completely put to rest, so to speak. But and they said, and it was a very specific denial that war plans were not texted. All right, that's a very specific thing. I thought he kind of chose his words carefully there. It
didn't sound like that. He sounded like he was just completely shook and he just blathered some Trump bullshit about fake news, right? And they made a specific denial about war plans, which, they're going to debate, like when Bill Clinton debated the word is, or, what was it, the word, some word that he debated as lying because he perjured himself. Like it was some, he was debating the meaning of some word that made it sound like he didn't purge himself. So they're going to try to finger fuck you on the idea that this wasn't war plans when it actually was, right? So that's what he's trying to do. Like the war plans is a criminal part. That's the classified part. So he's trying to debate whether these were actually war plans or not. Plant the seeds of doubt. So he's trying to minimize the effects of this fuck up.
The war plans themselves, the orders, if you will, the execution orders or anything like that were texted, but they're certainly based on what Jeffrey Goldberg has relayed. There was a number of things in there which were basically operational details, in terms of what weapon systems are going to be used, when they're...
This guy's trying to minimize it this guy's fucking him.
...going to be used, what the targets were. It sounds like some of the platforms were discussed in terms of how of what was going to deliver those things. So in that regard, stuff that I would have considered at least secret, I won't jump. There have been some who said this is top secret and everything. I don't know if it's top secret. I got to tell you, I've been doing intelligence stuff for a very long.
Okay, again, so they're trying to minimize it as best they can, but again, this isn't Fox News's like one of their shows. Like this is some, it's called the live, a live now from Fox, which must be just their internet, also YouTube channel, like fucking, and so they're not even really covering this, right? Their pundits aren't saying what they need to be saying. Is like Pete Hegseth has to fucking resign. I mean, that's what needs to happen. Multiple other sources are calling this amateur hour. I talked about the year of the amateur last year. Of course, Kamala Harris was an amateur in her, way that she handled her campaign, except she was good at, taking money from donors and converting it into, profit for her people, her experts, and herself, and defrauding the investors of the money they were giving to help her with her election, that she had no chance of winning. So the next video they posted was an 11-hour video of Trump's cabinet meeting, and it eventually led to this 2-minute video, which they posted separately. There's no commentary, there's no announcers. It's almost like what's that whatever that the governmental like media thing that's there. Geez, I can't remember it. But they're not. There's no announcers or anything. There's no hosts. So this is like, their live version. Maybe this is a channel they have. They cover live media, but they don't do much commentary. They don't have media personalities. They don't put experts on. This is Fox Live now. So they're not even covering this on Fox, right? That's what I'm saying.
There has been an unprecedented, to my experience, breach of operational security by a public dissemination on signal of plans for the Houthi attacks and discussions about those plans that included, it has been confirmed by the National Security Council, these included the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, on this signal chat over a course of several days. And we should note that Mr. Goldberg did not publicize any of the classified members, CIA people who were on this chat, nor any of the classified information on the ultimate day, 2 hours before the attacks took place. He thought he was being punked, that it was...
That's, whatever her name is, Andrea Mitchell. And she's, C-SPAN is the thing I was looking for. This is like the right-wing C-SPAN, like Fox News C-SPAN. They're covering all the stuff, mostly Trump stuff, but also there's stuff from the guy, whatever his name is, that has the minority position that Nancy Pelosi would have, but she resigned, that he's in charge of the House of Representatives for the Democrats, whatever his guy's name is. And he was giving a speech, and they had Chuck Schumer, so it was 11 hours of this stuff. And then she asked Andrea Mitchell, who's incredibly stiff, just use the term punk. That's great. Let's watch that again.
Took place. He thought he was being punked, that it was some sort of a trap, but eventually notified the White House about this. And the White House has confirmed that it's authentic. Secretary Rubio was part of all of these conversations. First of all, why was the cabinet secretaries and the National Security Cabinet discussing a potential military operation on Signal, which is a public app? And why didn't they notice a phone number that was not part of their group? And how concerned is the secretary about the implications of this?
Well, I have two very short things to say to you. First is that we will not comment on the secretary's deliberative conversations. And secondly, that you should contact the White House.
But in this regard, this was a very extensive series of conversations.
Where's the fake Christian Barbie?
Involving, a very important military action. And the Secretary of State is the leader of foreign policy. Shouldn't he have an opinion about this?
Well, from this podium, I'm not going to comment, and never would I comment in any framework. The secretary...
About such a massive fuck up. So that happened. So the story has been confirmed by the White House Fox News is not covering it, which is bad. I don't even see anything for them defending it. And there might be, but they're not putting it up on the internet because they don't want to be. They're going to wash their hands of this piece of shit, right? Like fucking. And so, it's really bad. Like it's really bad if Fox News is kind of remaining silent on it. They've admitted to it. The only thing that's debatable in terms of what Pete Hegseth said, whether he leaked the war plans or not, and that's true. He did, like he fucking did. So, in terms of the official story. Now it's about how they're going to handle it, what accountability is going to be there, and all the rest of these things. When does Trump comment on this, right? Trump remains silent. So he doesn't want any part of this piece of shit either, right? This is a fucking nightmare for him. It's embarrassing for all of them. And so, So right now we'll watch a little bit more of this stuff, but I got other stuff to cover here. And it's already like, all right, how's this going to end up?
Astonishing new reporting today showing just how lax Trump's top.
Amateur Hour reporter accidentally puts in National Security Group security group detailing whatever it is, the war plans. Amateur Hour is why I'm, because that's the new term they're using quite a bit about Trump and his administration, and it fucks all the other people. It fucks, RFK Jr., who they want to go after because he's, if he actually does something good that the, big pharma's against, it discredits all of them. It discredits his whole administration, right? Like it's amateur hour over there. Like that's what this thing does. It fucks everything that Trump's trying to do. When he's already looks like a moron over the tariffs.
National security advisors have been with classified information.
Every truther should now say something about the fake assassination attempt if they covered it like it was real. Like every person who claims to be some level of, a truth teller, whatever they think of themselves. Like all the other people you guys watch, all the other people that are in so-called truth community. Because I was shocked that they wouldn't even say it looks pretty fake. When they, we would have known if it was Biden, they would have all said it was fake. And so that shows that they're not real truthers or whatever. They're it's a huge fuck up on their part. Like I keep on harping to that, but like this is the outcome of that. That Trump's a fucking idiot, and he's just he did a WWE style fucking fake, totally fake event where his ear was not even bleeding, fake blood, ketchup gate, all the shit I covered. It was so fucking fake. And they chose not to and just to endorse the official story. And all the people like Tucker Carlson and all the other people, I mean, even Joe Rogan had him on doing the interview, and Joe Rogan said, there's nothing there. There's no scar. You're not, and Trump called it a little nick, right? And he made such a big deal wearing that big-ass bandage, and the blood was dry by the time he stood up because he didn't get fucking shot, right? Like he had to go with the ear because of just everything. Like he couldn't have been on his face. Like he wouldn't have got elected president with a bullet hole in his cheek or some shit, which of course he wouldn't have had because he didn't get shot. But they had to. But he wanted blood because that's a WWE thing. Red means green, which is blood means money. That's a saying they used to have at the WWE. He went for the whole WWE fight thing that he wanted to do. And they talk about that fight thing like it was fake as fuck. And so it's not like he was a fighter. He's a faker. He's a faker. He's a fraud. There's some fucking fraud, and you guys fucking carried water for him, all these other truthers. And it's time to fucking admit to it. Like you fucked up, right? Like you're not a truther if you fucking covered that. Like you have to do some serious soul searching.
Allowing a journalist a front row seat to real-time military planning. Atlantic writer Jeff.
Yeah, we know this fucking story here. Look at this guy, this grumpy motherfucker.
Probably the most sensitive information we have in the armed forces are pending military operations. And in this case, we're talking about the lives of Navy and Air Force flyers.
Okay, we get the idea. He fucked up. He's a piece of shit. Look at this ghoulish motherfucker. I mean, this is these are your people. Like, these are the people running shit, right? None of them I mean, they're scary looking, monstrous motherfuckers, right? Okay, so I watched this, kind of good. The real story of how Elon stole Tesla. Elon was an early investor into this company that was already creating the Roadster. And he was chairman of the board, but he wasn't CEO. And he was, he was a part of it, but he wasn't a founder. Like they already had the plans and there was a lot of push out there. There were some laws out there to build electric cars, and nobody was doing any of it. And Elon Musk played a pivotal role in terms of bringing money into it. You listen to the beginning; it's very technical in terms of, the corporate structure and the history of the company. But eventually, he bullied his way into being CEO, and he bullied the other guys out. That's the founders. He bullied the other founders out. He was, there's Elon Musk stuff, and it's kind of important to understand because he's a bullshitter. Like he wants to call himself a founder of Tesla, and he simply wasn't. He was the early money. He was some of the investor money. Like he was a shark in Shark Tank. Like these guys came to people to invest money. They already had an idea. They already had some, they already was producing some product, and they eventually released that Roadster, and then Elon Musk came in and muscled them out and took over the company with having more money than they had. The people who, whatever it is, they made money because they had stock in the company, so he made them rich, and so whatever. But they were out of the company, and he became the guy, and he took something they built by like a fucking hostile takeover. Okay, so I'm not sure. I think someone must have sent this to me. I don't know. Marlene Robinson, defender of democracy, register. Woke as fuck. Trump is demented madman. His cult is a Nazi movement. Never obey advance. No DM. Marlene has some issues. And don't DM her. But she does have this picture here. This is the before and after. So she has a natural face here. Her nose looks like it belongs on her face. And now she has this Michael Jackson nose. The comment here is, whoever did Michael Jackson's nose should lose their license. So she had, as a young lady, this is what she used to look like. If this is her, I mean, I believe this must be her. And now she looks like some sort of a ghoul with some, that doesn't look real. Her nose doesn't look real. And, that shows like a fucked up person. Like she's 26 years old. She's getting her face done, right? Again, I don't know if that's actually her because that might not be her. But if it is, like that could be her, right? Like it probably is because her nose looks kind of fake and like this whole thing, right? She looks natural here, healthy. I mean, that could be somebody else. Who the fuck knows? But anyway, somebody sent me this and, I've questioned her face because it seems like she's had some work done. Okay, so this is MSN. Caroline Leavitt's nose could be a result of plastic surgery or contouring. Contouring? I don't know what that is. Contouring. It would certainly have to be. See, looks like and this is in college, so she's college age, right? But she's only 27. And she's gone. That's quite a ghoulish transformation. Of course, she's put on some weight. But look at, like again, she's tan here. She's on vacation. She's smiling. She's happy. But Jesus Christ, right? I mean, that's what she used to look like. And her nose is quite significantly different. Again, her face is fatter, so you really can't say. But, why would she need plastic surgery, right? Like, she's not deformed. I mean, just, it's fucked up that she had it. And this is from the list. There's photos here. This is her from college. Some photos that she posted. There's the other photos there. And so, disaster, right? Like this is just, fucked up. So she played on a softball team. That's what this photo's from. So that is her photo. She is, like her face looks significantly different. These are old college photos where like there's these things here, but here's another college photo. See if this can make this bigger. again, quite different, right? Quite significantly, does not look like the same person. So, plastic surgery had something happen, right? Fucking some weird ghoulish thing happened there. It's all weird ass shit. It's all despicable people. Speaking of which, here's Anderson Cooper.
A nonpartisan independent agency called the U.S. Institute of
Just weird ass shit and despicable people, right?
Peace that promotes conflict resolution around the world is suing the Trump administration after a sudden takeover by Elon Musk's Doge team.
Okay, so let's get to this guy here. This guy's going to say shit.
There's no way you could have known about Doge and the what's going on with the efforts of Elon Musk. But you write in the book, you say there's a kind of bigotry about civil servants, and you went on to say there's the stereotype of the government worker. We all have in our heads this intractable picture of the 9-to-5er living off the taxpayer who adds no value and has no energy and somehow still subverts the public will. That's not what you found when you looked into the civil service.
No, in fact, this is why it first struck me as just this huge literary opportunity. Because when I started wandering around the departments no one pays attention to, in the first place it was like commerce and energy and agriculture, I was just shocked, not just by the caliber of the person, but by the
Oh, Jesus Christ, bro. Like, don't go over the top.
Quality of the character, like people who were extremely mission-driven, very knowledgeable.
Okay, come on. No, like, we all have experienced people who work at a governmental level. And there's less accountability for governmental employees. The reason I'm saying this, Michael Lewis, there's more fraud on Wall Street than in the government. That's the title of this video, which I would totally agree with, because Wall Street's about money. The government's about milking a governmental job. And across the globe, people do work, but, they don't have to, right? Like, governmental employees do work, but they don't necessarily have to. They don't have to be superstars. They just have to do enough to keep their job. It's hard as fuck to fire them. And more often than not, they get burned out and they get loose. They lose their passion for it. And then they're just, they're doing something, but they're not efficient. Not that, whatever Elon Musk is doing, he's a piece of shit, and whatever, like all the stuff I've said about him. But they're not great, and they're milking the government. They're on like government welfare for a job, and like I said, you can't fire them. But the real fraud is on Wall Street and money places where they're defrauding people of billions of dollars. Right? It's a totally different thing.
Devoted to public service. Didn't think, what's kind of great about them is they don't think of themselves as characters. They're horrible at telling their story. And then they're also surrounded by a phalanx of, political operatives who don't want them to tell their stories. But it was just like, it was character after character that you could write what felt like, short stories about them. And so it was... there's just a disconnect. I do think it's true that when people throw around insults about the federal bureaucrats, they're really revealing they don't know what goes on in the federal government.
Just shut up. Let's just get to the Wall Street part.
It's a mind-bendingly complicated place. It's doing lots of different things, some of them very well and some of them less well. When you go in, one of the things you notice is how hard fraud would be to perpetrate. Waste is different. Waste is a little complicated. And there are all sorts of inefficiencies that are not really the fault of the workers. It's more the fault of the structure of the system. But like you can't take a federal worker to lunch and buy them a turkey sandwich. They just won't take the money. They are...
Sure. They have so much integrity.
They're watched every which way, and they're just conditioned to be very, very careful about what they do financially. And like if you said to me, Michael, you got to go write a story about fraud, I would much rather go look for it in a private company. Much more likely to find it.
You think it's easier to find fraud in a private company than in the civil service?
Oh yeah. I worked on Wall Street, and there were a million things happen every day in a Wall Street firm that if it happened in the civil service, it would be a scandal. The people.
All right, so he doesn't really have any real knowledge. He's just talking shit because he's done a book on these guys, but he said he worked at Wall Street. But yeah, I would agree with it because there's so much more money. That's, if Elon Musk was really going to go after fraud, but it isn't governmental fraud. Sometimes governments have they got, like Elon Musk has, they get grants and loans and shit from the government or whatever it is. They get monies from the government. So sometimes that's, they should be held accountable for that. But anyways, you get the idea.
Another hectic week in Donald Trump's America, and the president watched the...
This was before. These things are before. These things I had up on my toolbar that were before the scandal.
NCAA wrestling match last night. But
Look at him.
and center back here in Washington is the education of America's children. After President Trump made good on a longtime conservative...
Okay, so that type of wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, whatever it's called, the wrestling that's in the Olympics, that's in high schools and colleges, is not this kind of wrestling, right? It has nothing to do with it. And this is fake performative wrestling. That's a show that he put this woman who's in charge of this fraudulent, corrupt, despicable organization that, I mean, if you look at the Netflix doc about it, and her husband's just a horrible person, piece of shit, right? And the way he even treats his son and his kids and the whole thing is despicable. And she's now in charge of the fucking education department. Like, she's a big-time donor, and Trump's been part of the WWE. And, he pulled the fucking fraud, a WWE-style performative event, and his assassination attempt, which we all know about. And so this is so fucking bizarre, right? Like, it's just, like, it's great that I love the apocalypse, and I know this is going to happen. Otherwise, it would drive me nuts. Like, if I was a perfectionist or someone who gave a fuck. I mean, this is so egregious, right?
Talking point and took major steps to shutter his own Department of Education. The president said some of the duties of the Education Department, like distributing funding for students with disabilities and managing student loans, would be handled by different departments. But there are urgent questions about how those changes would happen, how they would affect students who need the help, how any of it will help turn around learning for American kids. Well, here with me exclusively is the woman winding down her own...
Holy shit, right?
...own department, Education Secretary Linda McMahon. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. There's so many concerns and questions from parents about the real consequences of all of this. So let's talk about it. Hopefully we'll get some answers today. The president's executive order said that the Department of Education should begin to shutter. You well know, and you said this under oath, you can't do that without Congress changing the law. It doesn't seem like right now there are the votes to do that. So if you can't close it down, what exactly will the Education Department be doing now?
Well, I think, first of all, thanks, Dana, for having me this morning. It's nice
Thanks, Dana. Like, fucking, why would you be going on with Dana?
Start a Sunday with you.
Thank you.
I think the president was very clear. The outward-facing programs that are going to be affecting students there's not going to be any defunding for those programs. When he talked about student loans, that would be going to the Small Business Administration, and also then the programs for students with disabilities will more than likely...
So just so we're clear on this is an old-ass lady in her 70s who was in charge of WWE. Sometimes she was a performer because Vince McMahon got everyone involved. She was the CEO. She was the business person. And WWE was financially successful. It has zero to do. It's a private company that's about something despicable that featured Vince McMahon, who was a despicable person. And Trump was involved with that. She donated to Trump. So this is like, where he gives somebody an ambassadorship because they're loyal donors. She's been loyal. They're loyal to Trump. They're people who back Trump, right? He's connected to these people, the Hulk Hogans and these people. And so she has no knowledge of this. She's coming in as a complete outsider that knows nothing about the Department of Education. And she's being given these mandates by Trump, who knows nothing about the Department of Education and how it works. And he just thinks it sucks and take a sledgehammer to it without doing any sort of research. And she's got these mandates and protocols from him, and she's not some fucking rocket scientist. And so this is just the incompetence, right? This is the amateur hour stuff, because she can only do so good a job with all these liabilities, right? but the Trump people think, oh my God, he's brilliant. And so like, that's how fucked we are, that there's, 20, 30% of the population thinks that Trump walks on water, right? When he's like, an unknown idiot. And the people that are there to do checks and balance have been denuded by their own actions and discredited by their inability to fucking tell the truth about the last president who was, had Parkinson's. And so the whole thing's fucked here.
Likely rest in HHS, which, by the way, is where they began. I think we're looking at putting things in different departments where they can operate very efficiently as we look at how we can shut down the Department of
Do
Education.
they not operate efficiently now?
Not as well as they should be.
Okay, so that's stupid. Why would the other agencies be better? So you're going to take things that are now done by one department, put them in another department, and then in 4 years, in 2 years, the Democrats will have hold of the Senate and the Congress. In 4 years, there'll probably be a Democratic-run president. They're going to put this whole thing back the way it was. And they're going to have to spend money to do it. So it's not a long-lasting thing. It's like Trump just doing something performative because he said he would, and feeding red meat to the Republicans who want these things to be all closed down. But they're going to come back, right? Like this isn't, and moving them around to different departments that are equally corrupt and fucked. It's just silly. It's like busy work, right? Busy work. People hate busy work, right? Busy work. Just pretending to do something when you're not really doing, and actually making it worse, because then there's, as bad as it runs now. And I talk about this when you do regime change, you could have the worst government, the most corrupt government, the most low functioning government, and if you kill that government and install a puppet leader, we've seen what happens. The puppet leader doesn't last because it's not the will of the people, and it results in chaos, right? This is the kind of thing that you take down a dysfunctional organization, a department, and it might be the worst, but what you're going to replace it with is going to be chaos. And so that's what's going to happen here, because Trump is a chaos creator, because he just destroys shit without knowing the consequences, basking in his own brilliance because he's forgotten that he's a grifter, right? that he sucks at everything. And he's just good at being a confidence man.
As a matter of fact, the president campaigned on the fact that he wanted to close down the Department of Education. And what we saw...
So you campaigned on that. So you're doing that without knowing anything about it, right? So...
Our scores recently with the NAEP, which is our country's report card. I mean, it's unacceptable where education is in our country today.
That doesn't mean closing down the department's going to solve that. And they're comparing America to smaller countries. All the countries in Europe have 9-10 million people, and they have and there isn't the poverty and the vast amount of the illegal immigration and these things, and all the poor schools. Like you take the very best of American schools and compare them to these other schools, and America's doing really well, comparatively. It's just that we have so many more people, and everybody gets an education here, which is not the case in other countries, right?
And so the Department of Education does not educate one child. It does not establish any curriculum in any states. It doesn't hire teachers. It doesn't establish programs. Mm-hmm. What it is more of a pass-through of funding, which is appropriated by Congress, by the way. And so we want to make sure that that funding continues in...
Okay, so you get the idea. I mean, it's a disaster. Just because it's not about being successful. The thing about a grifter is, if you do any sort of research or critical thinking, you're going to expose the grift. Like if the Mark, the person who's the pigeon, looks into anything and fact checks anything, they realize this person's a grifter. They're being scammed. It's the idea that you can con a person into not searching and figuring out and doing the research to expose what you are, right? And Trump is a president where there's so many people fact checking him. And he's found an antidote to that, which is to call everything fake news. And we don't know what's going to happen. We know it's going to happen, but we don't know exactly how it's going to happen or what's going to happen when he closes down the Department of Education. And you can say, oh, look at how corrupt it is. But what happens when you close it down? Well, it gets worse. And it makes it even more corrupt because now there's no governmental oversight. And so it's stuff that it's like, well, we've never done this before. And then you do it, you're like, oh, that's why we never did this before, right? That's what Trump is, right? Okay, so this just came in. I want to wrap the video up here. We'll revisit this scandal tomorrow or other things. I don't know, don't care. Like we'll see what's going to happen. But here's the...
Ryan Goodman is with me now, legal analyst here out front and former special counsel at the Department of Defense.
Again, look at this guy. Look, fucking, like, you never see any protagonists. You never see anybody exuding light and love and, just beaming positive vibes, right? It's always some ghoulish MNFer.
So, Ryan, you just heard Senator Gallego saying one or more of them needs to go. I mean, Walz is the one who invited the reporter into the group. Hegseth is the one who posted the targets and weapons used to target. Obviously, at this moment, it doesn't seem like anyone's going to resign.
Yeah, they're not. It's crazy, right? But this is where we are at.
See, but I mean, when we say an extraordinary breach, is that the right word?
Absolutely. Don't know of any analog in history that's like this. And when these kinds of war plans are discussed at the Pentagon, there are many rooms that you can't even have the discussion in the Pentagon. You have to go to highly secure rooms. Oftentimes they're windowless because they need to be that secure from U.S. adversaries being able to eavesdrop. If there's a window, then it has to be a highly secured window. You can't bring your device into that room. So they aren't even just like bringing their device into the room. They're using their personal devices to communicate over this commercial messaging app.
When you put it like that, it sounds pretty fucked up.
Never heard anything like it.
So could anyone in it be in legal trouble? Anyone who was in this group, if they are not in actual chain of command getting fired or resigning trouble?
Absolutely. If we had an independent Justice Department, I'm sure they'd be looking into this. If these were lower level officials, I'm sure they'd be looking into this. The statute is actually one that many Americans can be familiar with. It's the Espionage Act, and there's a particular
Gallego said
provision.
he'd be court-martialed if he'd
That resonated with me when he said that. I was like, yes, that's very likely. That would have been the result. Or when Hillary Clinton used a private server, the investigation by the Justice Department and the FBI was whether or not she was grossly negligent. I think if you hear some of what the members of the Hill are saying, Republicans and Democrats alike, that this was grossly negligent. And that's actually the terms of the criminal statute for having gross negligence in
because of all the shit he said about Hillary Clinton, Trump did, he's on the hooks. Again, this is what I'm talking about, behavior. I've said this so much. When I would make fun of Britney Spears and I'd get all these right-wing Britney Spears loving people who would be mad at me and they would tell me I was mean or whatever, harsh or, whatever it was. And I said, well, you didn't mind it when I was doing. In fact, you were applauding it when I was saying these same things about Cardi B or Lady Gaga or any of these other left-leaning, celebrities. And they would say, well, Britney was abused. And I said, well, so are all these other people. So all these women said they were sexually abused as well. And so, are you against the behavior or are you against the person, the subject of the behavior? You have one rules for your people and another rule for the other side. And so if you're going to be an honest person and you're going to complain about behaviors, then you have to condemn those behaviors when they're done by you or somebody in your group or somebody that you love or somebody you admire or whatever. People on your side. The behavior is bad no matter who does it. And, none of these guys believe this. Left, right, they're all, they didn't, when Joe Biden was doing this stuff or Hillary Clinton, the left was covering for him. And now Trump is involved and the right will cover for him. But, it shows you how bad things are, that these behaviors are okay as long as it's a subjective ally or something like that.
Mishandling classified information. And in fact, if it's disclosed to somebody who's unauthorized and on their call is a journalist, that means there was in fact a disclosure.
Right. And of course, the Secretary of Defense's response was to deny what he did and to disparage the journalist.
Yeah. Let's talk about the story that has exploded over the last 24 hours. Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic writing about.
Okay, so I guess this is different things they put together here. So let me just switch over to voiceover, and I want to say one more thing about Pete Hegseth here. So you guys remember when Michael Jordan quit basketball to be a baseball player? And he sucked at it, right? Now, Michael Jordan was an exceptional athlete, but he couldn't hit the curveball. He just didn't have the skill level. No matter how much he tried, no matter how much he worked, He worked hard. He was somebody who was compulsive, he was a perfectionist. He just couldn't get it, right? He just wasn't ever going to be a professional baseball player. And that's, something where you could see a transferable skill set because he was a good athlete. He had potential in any athletic field. He could play sports, right? He could play any sport, fairly well, but only one sport really well professionally. And maybe he could have been a professional volleyball player, some of these other things, which would have been, more easily transferable sport, right? But, there are these things that people do where they go from one profession to another, where Trump is trying to do this as going from a flim-flam grifter in the business world to a flim-flam grifter in politics. And it was anything but a seamless transition, right? Even if he was great or brilliant, he's good at being a grifter, but all the other parts were very, was hard for him to do. And so when you hire somebody who's outside the box, or you give somebody who's a newbie, like a young person, a chance, you make a young person a CEO, right? Like they did with Theo Epstein when they hired him as the Boston Red Sox GM. And they wanted this other guy, this movie Moneyball. And Theo Epstein applied the same, it was a newfangled analytics to baseball, and now that's being used by everybody, right? And so once in a while they get a guy who's a wonderkin or somebody, or a woman who's a breakthrough, brilliant, cutting-edge person who just has success oozing from every pore, and, somebody takes a chance on them. They're not the traditional hire. They're not the safe hire. And if it goes wrong, you are scrutinized. Like if it goes south, you're scrutinized, right? And so when you take somebody who isn't a part of the group, an outsider, and doesn't have the training and abilities, they have to be somebody special, right? And Pete Hegseth was not that guy. So Pete Hegseth wasn't the guy like, we have to have this guy. He wasn't an obvious choice. He was a Trump choice. Nobody else thought of this guy as a potential Secretary of Defense because he was, he was in the National Guard, and then he commented on defense in Fox News and in, on social media in the Republican Party. So he was he worked for Fox News as a commentator, and he didn't have any professional experience in administration. And administration, he wasn't a general. He wasn't even a higher-ranking person in one of the major military branches. He was an outsider as a, guy involved with the National Guard level. Wasn't even like kind of a real soldier. National Guard people are whatever they are, but it's quite different than being in ordinary military. And he wasn't a higher-ranking person. He was a guy with a lot of opinions about the military. He was a Trumper, and he agreed with this kind of right-wing bullshit, fake patriot person who's all military and all, what this kind of stuff that Trump liked. And his biggest quality is he fawned all over Trump. He worshiped Trump. And so Trump took a huge chance on him. And the guy was an immediate nightmare because fucking, he was, right? Like he was a guy who he fathered, I think, 3 children with one woman. And then showing up drunk for work and, womanizing and being a piece of shit. He ends up having an affair with his producer, who he impregnates, and then he goes to some conference and bangs some other woman, and she calls it a sexual assault. And the charges were dropped, but there's some, it's bad, like it's all bad, right? And so he's married to one woman, he has another woman pregnant, and he's out philandering with other women and showing up to work drunk and just being a piece of shit, right? And that wasn't that long ago. Like his kid from that marriage is still like a toddler. And so, I guess it was like 2018, something like that. I don't even know when it was. And so he ends up getting kind of fired from his job at Fox. And he's not really somebody who was successful at what he was already doing. And what he was already doing was nothing like being the Secretary of the Defense, right? He just wasn't, he wasn't on that level. And yet Trump nominates him, and he shouldn't have got the job in the first fucking place. But if he has the job with all the issues he had, the character issues, with all the bullshit stuff that he did, with all the lack of experience, with all the fact that nobody thought this guy was going to be a good hire, he needed to be relatively perfect. And within the last week, he was walking Elon Musk, a guy who has deep business ties to China. And he almost gave Elon Musk the battle plans to China, in case we had a war with China, like fucking crazy shit. I mean, that should have been a huge scandal, and it almost was. It was just that Trump listened to some fake news and called it fake news, and at the same time, he reversed the position of what they were going to do. Elon Musk requested those plans. Why would he request those plans? Why would he need to know that? I mean, was it that the only plans he was asking for, or was if he was asking specifically for Chinese war plans, and he has, he's being held under the gun by China. He's like, this company's tanking there. Who knows what the fuck was going on with that, right? And so that would have been a catastrophic decision by both Trump and Hegseth. But then he follows it up with this other fucking bombshell, right? And so the guy should be fired because he should have never been hired in the fucking first place. He didn't deserve the job. He didn't work for the job. He didn't work his way up in the in the business that he was in, like through these administrative positions. He didn't go from general to a guy in charge of the Department of Defense, or some guy, whatever, that's been a longtime politician like Donald Rumsfeld. And I'm not saying these guys are good. Donald Rumsfeld was a piece of shit. Dick Cheney was the chair of the Defense Department, but they were involved in these high-level, executive-level defense shit, right? They were aware of it. They were part of the club. And, I don't like that club. I don't feel, I'm not praising that club, and I don't like the whole defense thing and the military-industrial complex. But, he's coming in as an outsider, and he immediately fucked things up. These are things that are possible felonies, definitely felonies, and fireable offenses. And Trump isn't going to fire him. Like, that's how fucked this is. And, he shouldn't have got the job in the first place, right? Like, he should have never been hired. His big criteria, the number one asset he had, was that he fawned all over Trump. He worshipped Trump, right? He licked Trump's fucking boots, which in itself is horrible judgment, right? And so, like anybody who does that should be a part of any kind of important thing. Like Trump is a fucking grifting criminal piece of shit. And, not that these other people aren't, but he's not even playing the game. He's not, there's ways that this dysfunctional system that is our government keeps on chugging along when it should have collapsed years ago, along with our economy and everything else. And throwing an outsider in there doesn't make it better. He's just going to destabilize everything. A time where it's fragile, our country's teetering on the brink. But anywho, this is just Tuesday. Like fuck. I do my sitting and this other stuff here. But my God, like it's just so horrible. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's part of our desperately important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.